At the 7-year-old's birthday party, a cruel gesture disguised as an accident reveals an invisible tension. A discreet employee realizes it wasn't an isolated mistake, but the beginning of something much more serious. While the house displays luxury, the child lives under silence, control, and emotional isolation. And when she cries alone in the closet, a silent alliance begins to change her destiny. The mansion in Belgravia, an upscale neighborhood in London, shimmered with the pink and gold decorations of the party. Sophia Madison was turning 7 that Saturday afternoon. The crown-shaped balloons and impeccably arranged tables contrasted sharply with the birthday girl's face, which hadn't smiled since her father announced he would need to attend to some work calls during the celebration. Louisa Anderson, recently hired as the Madison family's private librarian, organized the books that would be given as party favors to the few guests, all children of partners or important clients of Richard Madison, one of London's most sought-after tax lawyers. From her discreet corner, Louisa observed the family dynamic with keen and curious eyes. Sophia sat alone in one of the decorated chairs, swinging her feet that didn't reach the floor while adjusting the tiara that matched her dress. Her large, expressive brown eyes followed Beatrice, her stepmother, who circulated among the adult guests with an impeccable smile, occasionally interrupting conversations to ensure the waiters were serving drinks correctly. "Everyone, come on, it's time for the birthday song," announced Beatrice Hamilton Madison, her melodious voice always seeming to flip a switch when there was an audience. Louisa noticed that the woman didn't call Sophia, who remained seated until Mrs. Eleanor, the family's housekeeper for over 20 years, gently led her by the hand. "Come on, little one. It's your special moment." The cake arrived, 3 tiers of fondant, golden embellishments, and 7 slender candles on top. Beatrice positioned Sophia in front of the table, adjusting her hair and whispering something in her ear that made the girl stiffen. Richard, finally pulling himself away from his phone, appeared to stand beside his daughter, distractedly running a hand through her hair while still glancing at the device's screen. The guests sang "Happy Birthday" with rehearsed enthusiasm. When the song ended, Beatrice cheerfully announced, "Now Sophia will make a wish and blow out the candles." The girl closed her eyes for a moment. When she reopened them, she blew out the candles with a determination that surprised Louisa. Everyone applauded. That's when it happened. As she leaned in to cut the cake, Beatrice moved in a strange way, almost imperceptible to anyone not paying close attention. Her body nudged the table, causing the cake to wobble dangerously before toppling over and falling to the floor with a squishy, dry sound. An awkward silence filled the room. Sophia stood paralyzed, staring at the destroyed cake, her expression frozen in a non-feeling that seemed more disturbing to Louisa than any crying. "What a disaster!" exclaimed Beatrice, bringing her hands to her face. "I'm so sorry, darling, it was an accident. These tables are so unstable." But Louisa, standing at the entrance of the ballroom with the party favor books in her hands, saw something others didn't notice, the almost imperceptible smile that formed at the corner of Beatrice's lips before her expression transformed into a mask of consternation. And she also saw that the woman's hand had deliberately pushed the table. "Richard, do something," Beatrice complained, as the household staff were already moving to clean up the mess. Sophia's father, who had barely witnessed the incident because he was responding to a message, put his phone in his pocket and approached his daughter, crouching down to her eye level. "Don't be sad, princess. Daddy will have another cake brought, an even bigger one." "Okay." Sophia merely nodded, saying nothing. Her eyes were dry, and this deeply troubled Louisa. A 7-year-old child should cry when her birthday cake is destroyed, not remain silent as if accustomed to disappointments. "Don't worry about it," Beatrice intervened, smoothing her dress. "We already have enough ice cream and sweets. And Sophia doesn't even like cake that much, do you, darling?" The girl lowered her gaze and nodded in automatic agreement. The party continued, with the adults soon forgetting the incident. Richard returned to his calls. Sophia's few friends played under the supervision of a hired entertainer. The birthday girl remained seated, observing everything with distant eyes. Louisa distributed the party favors, but when it was time to give a book to Sophia, she made a point of kneeling beside her. "I chose this one especially for you," she said softly. "It's about a girl who discovers a secret world inside her own house. I thought you might like it." For a brief moment, Sophia's eyes sparkled. She took the book and caressed its illustrated cover. "Thank you," she replied so softly that Louisa barely heard her. "You're welcome. If you want, I can help you read it later. I work organizing your father's books, but my favorite job is reading stories." Sophia nodded, an almost imperceptible movement, before Beatrice appeared beside her. "Sophia, go play with the other children. Ms. Anderson has work to do in the library." When Sophia walked away, Beatrice turned to Louisa with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I appreciate your initiative with the favors, but I prefer you stick to your duties. I was clear when I hired you. Your responsibility is exclusively with the books in the collection. Sophia has appropriate tutors for her educational needs." Louisa nodded politely. "I understand, Mrs. Hamilton Madison. I apologize if I overstepped any boundaries." Beatrice maintained her artificial smile. "Don't worry. Just remember your place in this house." In the days that followed, Louisa began to notice a disturbing pattern. Sophia rarely appeared in the common areas of the mansion. When Louisa asked Mrs. Eleanor about the girl, the housekeeper responded with evasive phrases, but her gaze communicated concern. One night, while working late, cataloguing a new collection of rare books Richard had acquired, Louisa saw something that confirmed her suspicions. Beatrice left a tray of cold food in the corridor, outside Sophia's room, and sent a message on her phone. Seconds later, the door opened, and the girl silently took the tray, then closed the door again. That didn't seem normal. Louisa decided to pay more attention. The next day, she found an excuse to pass near Sophia's room, carrying some children's books that she justified as part of the cataloguing. The door was ajar, and what she saw disturbed her. Unlike the rest of the luxurious house, the girl's room had basic, almost institutional decor. Few toys, a bed with simple sheets, no decorative objects that suggested affection or personalization. Louisa moved away before she could be seen, but the image remained etched in her mind. Something was wrong in that house, and she was beginning to suspect that the birthday cake incident was not an isolated event. Her suspicion was confirmed 3 days later when, passing through the bedroom corridor to return some books to the library, she heard a muffled sound coming from the closet at the end of the corridor. As she approached, she found Sophia huddled among shoeboxes, crying silently with her face hidden between her knees. "Sophia?" "What happened, darling?" The girl looked up, startled, immediately wiping away her tears. "Nothing, Aunt Louisa. I just wanted to be alone." Louisa crouched beside her. "It's okay to cry when we're sad." "Do you want to tell me why you're sad?" Sophia hesitated, looking at the door as if fearing someone would appear. "My stepmother Beatrice said I can't cry in front of others. She says it's ugly and that crying children bother my father. And do you believe that?" The girl shrugged. "I don't know. But when I cry, she gets angry, and when she gets angry—" Sophia stopped talking, biting her lip. "What happens when she gets angry?" "She says she's going to send me back." "Send you back? What do you mean?" Sophia wiped her nose on her sleeve. "Send me back to the place for children nobody wants. She says my father only keeps me here out of obligation because my mother died and there was no one else to stay with me." Louisa felt a pang in her chest. That was explicit psychological abuse. She gently held the girl's hand. "Sophia, that's not true. Your father loves you, I'm sure, and there's no such place to send back children. You are loved and important." The girl looked at her with a mixture of hope and distrust. Before they could continue their conversation, they heard footsteps in the corridor. Sophia quickly stood up. "Please, don't tell anyone you saw me crying, please." "I won't," Louisa promised, feeling that she had just established a crucial bond of trust. "But I want you to know that you can talk to me whenever you need to, okay?" Sophia nodded and hurriedly left the closet, leaving Louisa with a growing certainty that she needed to do something to protect that child. That night, Louisa couldn't sleep. She mentally reviewed all the signs she had observed since she started working in the Madison mansion 3 months ago. The memories fit together like pieces of a disturbing puzzle. Sophia always downcast, the orders by message, the meals left in the corridor, the girl's absence from common areas of the house, the room devoid of affection, the cake incident. The next morning, Louisa made a decision. She would buy a notebook to systematically record everything she witnessed. If her intuition was correct, and she rarely was wrong about people, Sophia was a victim of psychological abuse and possibly other types of neglect, right under everyone's nose. Method and evidence, she murmured to herself as she opened a file on her personal computer. As a librarian with a degree in library science from Oxford University, Louisa Anderson had a habit of meticulous documentation. This skill, which she had always considered merely professional, could now be crucial to protecting a child. Her first entry was about the birthday party. She described in detail what she had seen: Beatrice's deliberate push of the table, the brief smile before the mask of consternation, Sophia's paralysis, Richard's indifference. She dated and digitally signed the document. She then remembered something important. The party had been filmed by a professional photographer hired by Beatrice. The man had circulated through the mansion all afternoon, recording every moment, including, if Louisa was right, the cake incident. With the excuse of needing the photos for a family library memory project that Richard had mentioned, Louisa obtained the photographer's contact information from Mrs. Eleanor. They arranged for coffee at a bookstore near his work, and Louisa explained that she would like access to the raw material to select images for the family's collection. "Including the videos?" asked Marcus, the photographer, as he fiddled with his laptop. "Especially the videos," Louisa confirmed. "Dr. Madison wants to preserve moving memories too." Marcus nodded. "I have everything here. Mrs. Hamilton Madison has already received the edited material, but I can give you the original files. I just need you to sign a terms of use, as it contains family images." Louisa signed the document and minutes later left the bookstore with a USB drive containing all the party material. That night, she watched each video carefully until she found the exact moment. The camera had perfectly captured the instant Beatrice pushed the table, the fleeting smile and Sophia's gaze. She saved the file in multiple copies, sent it to her own email, and kept the original USB drive in a safe place. "Evidence number 1, she recorded in her notebook. The following week, Louisa noticed that Sophia did not go to school for 3 consecutive days. When she questioned Mrs. Eleanor, the housekeeper evasively replied that the girl wasn't feeling well, but her gaze communicated concern. "Mrs. Eleanor, I haven't been working here long, but I noticed something isn't right with Sophia," Louisa ventured, at a moment when they were alone in the kitchen. The 60-year-old woman sighed, looking around before speaking. "Ms. Louisa, I've been in this house since before Sophia was born. I saw her mother, Clarissa, God rest her soul, suffer with her illness. When she passed, Dr. Richard was lost. The girl was only 4 years old. And Beatrice, when did she enter their lives? Little more than a year later. She was a secretary in his office. Very efficient, very beautiful. The doctor was vulnerable, you know. A single man with a small daughter, an empire to manage." Mrs. Eleanor shook her head. At first, she seemed to like Sophia. After the wedding, things started to change. What kind of things? Small things at first. Stricter rules, fewer outings, less contact with her mother's family. Then Sophia's routine became increasingly controlled. Extra lessons, forced studies, little time to play. Dr. Richard is almost never home. He travels a lot. And when he is, he seems to live in another world. And about school? Why did Sophia miss these days? Mrs. Eleanor lowered her voice even further. "The headmistress called last week. It seems the girl's performance has dropped significantly. Mrs. Hamilton Madison said Sophia is having trouble concentrating and that she's going to change schools." Louisa made a mental note to investigate this. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Eleanor. I'm worried about Sophia." The housekeeper lightly squeezed Louisa's arm. "Me too, dear. But I'm afraid to say anything and lose my job. I have my grandchildren to support. I understand. Don't worry, our conversation stays between us." The next day, Louisa used her lunch break to visit the Montessori school where Sophia studied. She introduced herself as an employee of the Madison family, responsible for Sophia's educational monitoring. The pedagogical coordinator, Marcia Olson, received her with visible relief. "It's good that someone from the family came. We've been trying to schedule a meeting for weeks. Sophia's performance has dropped drastically in the last quarter. Can you tell me more about it?" Marcia opened a folder with Sophia's assignments and evaluations. "Look, until 6 months ago, Sophia was one of the best students in her class. Participative, creative, excellent in reading and math. Then she started to change. She became withdrawn, stopped participating in class, her grades dropped. And there was an incident 3 weeks ago that left us very concerned. What incident? Sophia fainted during recess. When the nurse attended to her, she realized she hadn't eaten anything all day. She said she had forgotten her lunchbox and was embarrassed to ask for food, but her fainting was due to hypoglycemia for sure. Louisa felt a tightening in her stomach. "And did you inform the family?" "Immediately. The stepmother, Mrs. Beatrice, came to pick her up and assured us that Sophia was on a special diet, supervised by a nutritionist, due to allergies. But we didn't receive any medical certificate or report, just a signed statement from her." "Has Sophia returned to school regularly since then?" Marcia consulted the system. "Absences have increased. We received justifications by email, usually alleging medical appointments or indispositions, all signed by the stepmother, none with attached proof." Louisa asked to photograph Sophia's performance reports and absence justifications, explaining that she needed to document everything for the follow-up she would do at home. The coordinator, visibly concerned about the student's well-being, allowed it. "Please help Sophia," Marcia pleaded as they said goodbye. "She is a brilliant child, but something is dimming her light." Back at the mansion, Louisa found Sophia sitting alone on the back veranda, with an exercise book in front of her and a disheartened expression. "Hi, Sophia. Studying hard?" The girl looked up. "I have to finish everything before my stepmother comes back. She said I won't have dinner if I don't finish." Louisa looked at the book. They were math exercises for third graders, well above Sophia's school level. "That seems difficult for your age. Are you managing to do it?" Sophia shook her head negatively, her eyes welling up. "I don't understand almost anything. Stepmother says I'm behind and need to catch up, but..." She didn't complete the sentence. "Do you want a little help?" Louisa offered, sitting beside her. For 40 minutes, Louisa helped Sophia with the exercises, patiently explaining each concept. The girl was intelligent and learned quickly, but she was clearly overwhelmed with material beyond her age group. "Can I ask you something, Sophia? Why haven't you been to school these days?" The girl bit her lip. "Stepmother said I was having inappropriate behavior at school and needed to be grounded, but I don't know what I did wrong." "And does your father know you're not going to school?" "Daddy is traveling. He only comes back next week." At that moment, Louisa heard the sound of high heels on the marble floor. Beatrice appeared at the veranda door, her face a mask of false cordiality. "Sophia, have you finished your exercises? And I see you got unsolicited help." Louisa stood up calmly. "Excuse me, Mrs. Beatrice. I was passing by and saw Sophia struggling with some mathematical concepts. I thought I could help." "Very thoughtful, Miss Anderson, but as we've discussed before, Sophia has specific tutors for each subject. We don't want to confuse her with different methods." Beatrice's smile did not reach her cold eyes. "By the way, the books you asked to catalogue have arrived. They are in the library." It was a clear dismissal. Louisa nodded politely and left, not before exchanging a meaningful look with Sophia, who had lowered her head again to her exercises. That night, while organizing the new books, Louisa felt someone quietly enter the library. It was Sophia in pajamas carrying a sheet of paper. "Sophia, are you okay? It's late, you should be sleeping." "I wanted to show you something," the girl said softly, extending the paper. "I drew this last week, but stepmother wouldn't let me take it to school." Louisa looked at the drawing. 4 human figures were represented. A man in a suit, obviously Richard, a small girl, Sophia, a woman in a long dress with dark hair, Beatrice, and a 4th figure wearing glasses, whom Louisa recognized as herself. Beatrice's figure was heavily, angrily scribbled over, and next to it was a phrase written in child's handwriting. "She wants me to disappear." "Sophia, why do you think your stepmother wants you to disappear?" The girl looked at her own feet. "I heard her talking on the phone. She said it would be easier if I didn't exist, that my father would pay more attention to her, and that my money—" "Your money?" Louisa frowned. "Yes, Mommy left money for me. A lot of money for when I grow up. Stepmother said she's taking care of it for me, but that no one supervises, so she can—" Sophia stopped as if realizing she was saying something forbidden. Louisa felt a chill. If there was a financial fund designated for Sophia, and Beatrice was managing it without supervision, that could mean much more than emotional abuse. It could be embezzlement. Sophia, this drawing is very important. Can I keep it? The girl nodded. But don't show it to stepmother. She'll get angry. I won't show it. Louisa carefully put the drawing away. Now come on. I'll take you back to your room before anyone notices you're awake. As they walked silently down the corridor, Louisa made a decision. Evidence was accumulating, and the situation seemed more serious than she had initially imagined. It was time to seek professional help. She needed to talk to someone who understood child law and could guide the next steps. The next day, Louisa contacted Dr. Felicity Vance, a lawyer specializing in child and adolescent rights, whose reputation for defending minors in vulnerable situations was well known in London's legal circles. The lawyer agreed to meet her after work. While preparing the documentation she would take to the meeting, Louisa heard shouts coming from Sophia's room. She discreetly approached the door and heard Beatrice's voice. "You're useless. Do you think I don't know you've been talking to that librarian? If you keep this up, I'll have to take more serious measures. And your father. He won't even notice you're gone when you're at boarding school." Louisa's heart raced. The situation was worsening and quickly. With her cell phone, she discreetly recorded Beatrice's shouts as further evidence. Now she was sure she needed to act as soon as possible to protect Sophia. Dr. Felicity Vance's office was in a renovated townhouse in the Notting Hill neighbourhood. Unlike the luxurious law offices in London's financial centre, the space had a welcoming atmosphere, with colourful walls decorated with framed children's drawings and a small play area in the corner of the reception. Louisa arrived promptly at 6:30 p.m., carrying a folder with all the documentation she had gathered in recent weeks. The secretary led her to a back room where Felicity awaited her. "Good evening, Louisa. Please sit down." The lawyer, a black woman in her early 40s, gestured to the chair in front of her desk. Her perceptive eyes carefully examined the visitor. "You mentioned a case of possible child abuse in a high-profile family. Tell me the details." For almost an hour, Louisa meticulously recounted everything she had observed and documented. The cake incident, Sophia's isolation, irregular eating, the drop in school performance, the fainting due to hypoglycemia, disproportionate punishments, Beatrice's threats, and finally, the suspicion of misappropriation of the girl's financial fund. As she spoke, Louisa presented the evidence, the party video, photographs of Sophia's stripped-down room in contrast to the luxury of the rest of the house, school reports showing the abrupt drop in performance, absence justifications signed by the stepmother without medical proof, the audio recording of the threats, and finally, Sophia's drawing with the disturbing phrase, "She wants me to disappear." Felicity examined each item carefully, making detailed notes. When Louisa finished her account, the lawyer remained silent for a few moments, reorganizing the documents. "Louisa, you've done an impressive job documenting all this. Many cases of abuse in high-income families go unnoticed, precisely because appearances are maintained at all costs. Are you aware that by bringing this evidence, you are initiating a process that could have serious consequences?" "I am. My only concern is Sophia's well-being." "And what about your job? Are you prepared to possibly lose it?" Louisa hesitated for only a second. "If that's the price to protect a child, I'm willing to pay it." Felicity nodded with approval. "Very well. We will proceed as follows. First, I will file a formal complaint with Social Services and the Family Court of Justice, attaching all this documentation. Then we will request independent medical and psychological evaluations for Sophia, as well as an investigation into the financial fund her mother left for her. Her father, Richard, I'm not sure if he knows what's happening. He always seems absent, distracted." "Passive neglect is also a form of abuse," Felicity observed, "but we will keep an open mind regarding him. Sometimes people under the influence of manipulative partners don't realize what's happening right before their eyes. In any case, Sophia's well-being comes first." The lawyer continued, explaining the next steps. "We will need testimonies from the teacher and the school coordinator, and it would also be helpful if the housekeeper, Mrs. Eleanor, agreed to testify." "I don't know if she will agree. She fears losing her job." "Understandable, but we will try. Witnesses who interact daily with the family are crucial." Felicity closed her folder. "One important thing. From now on, you need to be extremely discreet. Continue documenting everything, but avoid direct confrontations with Beatrice or any abrupt changes in your behavior that might arouse suspicion. Louisa nodded. And what about Sophia? How can I help her in the meantime? Continue to be a support for her, but without promising anything you cannot fulfill. Children in abusive situations develop complex defense mechanisms. Sophia may be so accustomed to disappointments that she will find it difficult to fully trust anyone. As she left the lawyer's office, Louisa felt simultaneously relieved to have started the process and apprehensive about the developments. Felicity had made it clear that cases involving influential families often met resistance within the system, especially when the accused had significant political or financial connections. The next morning, upon arriving at the Madison mansion, Louisa noticed unusual activity. An unfamiliar car was parked at the entrance, and Beatrice nervously paced the living room talking on the phone. I don't care about standard procedure. I want to know who made the complaint and based on what, she demanded, gesticulating emphatically. Noticing Louisa's presence, Beatrice abruptly cut off the call. Good morning, Miss Anderson. Have you been informed about the visit we're having today? Visit? No, Mrs. Beatrice. Has something happened? Beatrice's artificial smile contrasted with the evident tension on her face. Apparently someone saw fit to make an unfounded complaint to social services, alleging that Sophia is suffering some kind of neglect. Absurd, isn't it? A social worker will come today for an evaluation. Just formalities, of course, but extremely inconvenient. Louisa maintained a neutral expression, although her heart pounded. The process had begun more quickly than she expected. I understand. Is there anything I can help with? That won't be necessary. In fact, I prefer you stay in the library during the visit. We don't want to confuse things with conflicting information. As you prefer. As she headed to the library, Louisa saw Sophia being led by Beatrice to her room. The girl gave her a confused, almost frightened look. Hours later, discreetly peeking through the library window that overlooked the house entrance, Louisa saw a middle-aged woman carrying a folder being received by Beatrice with exaggerated cordiality. Sophia stood beside her, wearing a dress Louisa had never seen before, her hair neatly arranged. Mrs. Eleanor entered the library carrying a tray with tea. The mistress asked me to bring you this and say you can take a longer break today, preferably away from the living room. Louisa watched the housekeeper carefully. Mrs. Eleanor, do you know what's happening? I saw a social worker arrive. The elderly woman lowered her voice. It's because of the complaint. Mrs. Beatrice is furious. She spent the whole morning tidying Sophia's room, put new stuffed animals, toys she never let her use before. She even had a new computer delivered to her room, all to impress the lady from social services. And Sophia, how is she? Frightened. Her stepmother spent an hour rehearsing answers with her. She said that if Sophia told anything negative, she would be sent to an orphanage where children are truly mistreated. Mrs. Eleanor sighed deeply. Miss Louisa, I've worked for this family for a long time. I saw Sophia born, I saw her mother consumed by illness. I never interfered in my employer's affairs, but... Her voice faltered. But, Louisa encouraged, but if someone officially asks me, I won't lie. Sophia doesn't deserve this. No child deserves it. Louisa gently squeezed the housekeeper's hand. Thank you, Mrs. Eleanor. Your voice can make all the difference. The social worker's visit lasted approximately 2 hours. From the library window, Louisa saw the woman being led by Beatrice on a tour of the house, including a stop in Sophia's room, now unrecognizable with its improvised decor. At no point was the social worker left alone with the girl. Beatrice remained by her side throughout the interview, frequently answering questions directed at the child. When the professional finally left, Louisa noticed her expression, a mixture of polite neutrality and something that could be described as distrust. It had been a perfect staging, but perhaps not entirely convincing. That night, Louisa received a message from Felicity. First stage completed. Initial hearing scheduled for next week. Stay vigilant. The days that followed were tense. Beatrice seemed more controlling than ever, constantly monitoring Sophia's movements and further limiting her access to the common areas of the house. The girl in turn appeared increasingly withdrawn. On Thursday, 3 days after the social worker's visit, Louisa was organizing books when she noticed a brown envelope slipped under the library door. She looked around, but there was no one. Upon opening the envelope, She found copies of bank statements showing periodic transfers from an account in Sophia's name to Beatrice's personal account. The transactions were disguised as educational expenses and specialized medical treatments, but the amounts were significant and regular. There was no identified sender on the envelope, but Louisa suspected it might have come from someone at the bank with access to the family's financial information. Perhaps someone who had also noticed the irregularities and decided to act anonymously. Immediately, Louisa photographed the documents and sent the images to Felicity, with a message explaining the mysterious origin of the statements. The lawyer responded quickly. "Crucial evidence. We will request a formal financial investigation at the hearing." The next day, Louisa was called to Richard Madison's office, something that rarely happened. Sophia's father had returned from his trip and looked tired, with deep circles under his eyes. "Miss Anderson, my wife, informed me about an unpleasant incident involving a visit from social services. Apparently there was some kind of anonymous complaint." Louisa maintained her composure. "Yes, Mr. Madison, I heard about it. Truly regrettable." Richard watched her for a moment as if trying to decipher something in her expression. "How long have you been working with us again?" 4 months? "Almost 5, sir." "And during that time, have you had much contact with my daughter?" "Only as necessary, sir. Sophia likes books, so we occasionally meet in the library." Richard adjusted his tie, appearing uncomfortable. "Beatrice mentioned that you have been excessively attentive to Sophia. She believes this may be causing confusion for the girl, disrespecting family hierarchy. I apologize if I gave that impression, Mr. Madison. My intention has always been purely professional." The man sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Look, I'll be direct. We're living in complicated times. My schedule is exhausting. My wife manages the house as best as possible. Sophia is a child who, well, since she lost her mother, she's become more reserved. Normal for her age, the psychologists assured me. This complaint is completely absurd." "I understand, sir." "I hope so." Richard stared directly at her. "Because you were hired to organize my library, not to get involved in family matters. Are we clear?" "Perfectly, Mr. Madison." Leaving the office, Louisa crossed paths with Beatrice in the corridor. The woman smiled in a calculated way. "Did you have a good talk?" "Richard can seem intimidating sometimes, but he's just protecting our family." Her tone was falsely sweet. "I'd also like to inform you that starting next week, Sophia will have daily study sessions with a new tutor. Therefore, it won't be necessary for you to help with her readings." "I understand, Mrs. Beatrice. I merely perform my duties." "Excellent. I'm sure we won't have any more problems then." That afternoon, as Louisa catalogued a new shipment of books, Sophia silently appeared in the library. She looked around before approaching. "Aunt Lou," she whispered, "Stepmother is very angry. She says someone told lies about her and she's going to find out who it was." Louisa crouched down to the girl's eye level. "Sophia, are you okay? Did anyone hurt you?" The girl shook her head. "No, but—" Her eyes filled with tears. "She tore up the book you gave me, the one about the girl who finds a secret world. She said it was a silly story." Louisa felt a pang of anger but kept her voice calm. "I'm so sorry about your book. Maybe I can find another one for you secretly." "Do you promise?" "I promise." Sophia hesitated, looking at the door again. "Aunt Lou, do you think I'll have to leave here?" "Why do you ask that, darling?" "Stepmother said people are trying to take me away. Then I'll go to a horrible place where children are really mistreated." "Is that true?" Louisa gently held the girl's hands. "Sophia, listen carefully. There are many people working to ensure you are safe and happy. No one wants to take you to a bad place. If you ever need to leave this house, it will be for a place where they will take very good care of you until everything is resolved. But what about my father? Will he come with me?" The question was difficult. Louisa chose her words carefully. "Your father loves you, Sophia. Sometimes adults need help understanding what's best for their children. But one thing I can guarantee, you are not alone in this." Sophia hugged Louisa suddenly, something she had never done before. "I'm scared," she confessed in an almost inaudible whisper. "I know, darling. But sometimes we need to be brave for a while so things can get better later. Can you be brave?" The girl nodded against her shoulder. "I'll try." "Good, now go before anyone sees you here." As she watched Sophia leave the library, Louisa felt the weight of the responsibility she had taken on. She was no longer just a concerned employee or a well-intentioned witness. She was actively fighting for the future of a vulnerable child against powerful adversaries. On Sunday evening, Louisa received another message from Felicity. Hearing confirmed for Tuesday, 2 p.m. Complete documentation filed. Be prepared to testify. Judge ordered father's mandatory presence. The battle was just beginning, and the first official confrontation was set. Louisa took a deep breath, mentally reviewing all the evidence she had collected. There was no turning back. The next step would be before the justice system. The Family Court of Justice was an imposing building in central London. Louisa arrived an hour before the scheduled time, following Felicity's instructions. She wore a sober outfit, navy blue trousers and blazer over a white blouse, and carried a folder with copies of all the documentation, although the lawyer had already officially submitted the material. Felicity awaited her in the lobby, impeccable in a grey suit, her curly hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Beside her was a man of approximately 50, whom she introduced as Dr. Paul Reynolds, a forensic psychologist appointed by the court to monitor the case. Louisa, Dr. Reynolds will observe the hearing today, and if the judge determines, he will conduct Sophia's independent psychological evaluation, Felicity explained. He has already reviewed our preliminary documentation. The psychologist shook Louisa's hand firmly. Your documentation work was impressive, Ms. Anderson. We rarely see such methodical records in cases like this. Thank you, Doctor. I just did what I thought was necessary to protect Sophia. And you did well, he nodded. Cases in high-income families tend to be particularly challenging. The facade of perfection, the purposefully created social isolation, the resources to hire aggressive lawyers, all make it difficult to identify and prove abuse. Felicity checked her watch. Let's go upstairs. I want to explain what to expect from today's hearing. As they walked through the courthouse corridors, the lawyer detailed the procedure. This is a preliminary hearing for evaluation of evidence and determination of precautionary measures if necessary. The Judge Cecilia Albright, has extensive experience in child rights. She will hear both sides and decide the next steps. Has the Madison family arrived? Louisa asked. Yes, I saw Richard and Beatrice in the waiting room with their lawyer, Mr. Alexander Brooks, one of London's most expensive, specializing in defending high-profile clients. Don't be intimidated. He will try to discredit you, question your motives, suggest you have some kind of obsession with the child or resentment against the family. It's standard tactic. Louisa felt a tightening in her stomach. And Sophia, she won't be present today. In cases involving possible abuse, children of that age are only heard in controlled environments, with appropriate psychological support. As they entered the judge's anteroom, Louisa immediately spotted Richard and Beatrice. Sophia's father seemed tense, constantly checking his phone. Beatrice, on the other hand, maintained a serene, almost confident expression, occasionally whispering something to a tall, grey-haired man whom Louisa presumed to be Mr. Brooks. When Beatrice noticed Louisa's presence, her face hardened for a fraction of a second before recomposing itself into the perfectly calibrated smile she reserved for public occasions. Richard, on the contrary, seemed genuinely surprised to see the librarian. Miss Anderson, what are you doing here? He asked, approaching with a frown. Before Louisa could answer, Felicity gently intervened. Good morning, Dr. Madison. I am Felicity Vance, Ms. Anderson's lawyer in this proceeding. I believe you will be informed of all the details during the hearing. The tall man approached. Richard, I suggest no prior communication. I am Alexander Brooks, lawyer for the Madison family. Let the judge conduct the proceedings appropriately. Felicity smiled cordially. Dr. Brooks, good to see you again. I see you still prefer to represent defendants in child abuse cases. Some things never change. The lawyer narrowed his eyes but maintained his professional composure. Dr. Vance, your insinuations are as predictable as they are unfounded. My clients are exemplary citizens suffering an unjustified attack on their reputation. We'll see what the evidence says, Felicity replied calmly. At that moment, the courtroom door opened and a bailiff called those present. Louisa felt her legs tremble as she entered the austere room. The judge, a 60-year-old woman with short grey hair and a stern expression, was already seated at the front. Everyone took their places and the hearing began. We are gathered for a preliminary analysis of Case 2783-2025, involving allegations of ill treatment, neglect, and possible misappropriation of funds to the detriment of the minor Sophia Madison, aged 7, announced Judge Cecilia Albright, adjusting her square-framed glasses. We will begin with the presentation of the complainant's allegations. Felicity stood up and methodically presented the case, displaying the evidence collected by Louisa, the video of the cake incident, the school reports, the records of unjustified absences, the photographs of the room devoid of affection, the audio recordings of Beatrice's threats, Sophia's drawing, and finally, the anonymous bank statements showing the suspicious transfers. During the presentation, Louisa observed Richard's reactions. The man seemed increasingly disturbed, alternating looks of disbelief at the documents and at his wife, who maintained an impassive expression, occasionally whispering something to her lawyer. When the birthday video was played, clearly showing Beatrice deliberately pushing the table to knock over the cake, Richard visibly paled. It was the first time Louisa realized that he truly was unaware of what was happening in his home. The judge watched everything with meticulous attention, making occasional notes. When Felicity finished, she turned to Louisa. Ms. Anderson, why did you decide to intervene in this situation? What motivated you to gather this evidence? Louisa took a deep breath before answering. Your Honor, I have worked as a librarian for 12 years. I have been in various institutions and families. I have never seen a child as systematically silenced and isolated as Sophia. The cake incident was just the first sign. Then came the cold meals left in the corridor, the orders by message to keep Sophia isolated, the prohibition for her to frequent common areas of the house. When I discovered that Sophia had fainted at school due to lack of adequate food, and that she was being overloaded with studies beyond her age, while being prevented from attending classes regularly, I knew I had to do something. And what about the drawing? How did it come to you? Sophia spontaneously sought me out in the library. She wanted to show me the drawing because she knew I cared about her. That's when she told me she had heard her stepmother talking about getting rid of her, and about the money her mother left. The judge turned her attention back to Richard. Mr. Madison, were you aware of these incidents? Richard seemed stunned. No, not in this way. Beatrice always told me that Sophia was having difficulty adapting, that she needed special discipline, private tutors. As for school absences, I was informed they were due to health issues. And you never personally verified this information? The man lowered his gaze. I travel constantly for work. I trusted my wife to handle these matters. The judge noted something before continuing. And what about the financial fund mentioned? What can you tell us about it? My late wife, Clarissa, left a substantial fund for Sophia, administered by me as legal guardian. In the last year, I delegated the day-to-day administration to Beatrice, who presented me with monthly reports on expenses, always related to Sophia's education and health. Did you verify these expenses? I signed the documents Beatrice prepared, Richard admitted, appearing increasingly troubled. I trusted she was acting in Sophia's best interest. Then it was Mr. Brooks' turn to present the defense. As Felicity had predicted, he focused his efforts on discrediting Louisa, suggesting that she had developed an improper fixation on Sophia and that she was resentful for having been corrected when she overstepped her professional duties. My clients merely set appropriate boundaries for an employee who insisted on interfering in the child's education against expressly established guidelines, the lawyer argued. As for the evidence presented, these are decontextualized fragments or fabricated to create a false narrative. The judge listened carefully before addressing Beatrice. Mrs. Hamilton Madison, I would like to hear your version of the cake incident, clearly documented in the video. Beatrice maintained her composure. It was an unfortunate accident, Your Honor. The table was unstable. The video may give a mistaken impression due to the camera angle. And what about Sophia's dietary restrictions? Her teacher reported a fainting spell due to hypoglycemia. Sophia has food sensitivities that we are investigating with specialists. We follow a controlled diet recommended by a nutritionist. Can you present medical reports confirming this condition? Beatrice hesitated briefly. I can provide them for the next hearing, certainly. The judge continued the questioning for almost an hour, alternating between Beatrice, Richard, Louisa, and the lawyers. At the end, she requested the presence of 2 additional witnesses who had been summoned: Marcia Olson, Sophia's school pedagogical coordinator, and Mrs. Eleanor, the housekeeper. Marcia's testimony was compelling. She described the drastic change in Sophia's behavior and performance, the fainting episode, the unjustified absences, and her growing concern for the students' well-being. She presented school assignments that evidenced the girls' regression, from creative essays and colorful drawings to almost blank pages or those with aggressive strokes. When it was Mrs. Eleanor's turn, the housekeeper entered visibly nervous, avoiding looking directly at Beatrice. With a trembling voice at first, but progressively firmer, she confirmed Louisa's observations. Sophia was kept isolated, received insufficient food, was subjected to an excessively rigid study routine, and was frequently threatened by her stepmother when her father was not present. "The girl lives in fear," Mrs. Eleanor concluded, wiping away a tear. "It's not right what they do to her. Clarissa, God rest her soul, would be devastated if she saw her daughter like this." After almost 4 hours of hearing, the judge made her final considerations. This case presents sufficiently serious elements to justify immediate protective measures. I order independent medical and psychological evaluations of the minor Sophia, to be conducted by Dr. Paul Reynolds and Dr. Marina Grant, a pediatric neurologist, in a neutral environment and without the presence of the guardians. Beatrice made a move to protest, but her lawyer restrained her with a discreet gesture. Additionally, the judge continued, I order the immediate investigation of the financial fund mentioned, with a temporary suspension of any transactions. Social services will conduct weekly, unannounced visits to the residents to monitor the situation. The judge adjusted her glasses before proceeding. As for paternal visits, they will be temporarily restricted to supervised meetings 3 times a week, at a location designated by the court, until the evaluations are completed. Richard looked shocked. "But, Your Honor, I am her father. I didn't do anything." "Precisely, Mr. Madison," the judge interrupted sternly. "You did nothing while your daughter possibly suffered abuse under your care. Your omission, if proven, is as serious as direct actions." Richard fell silent, dejected. Beatrice, in turn, maintained a calculated calm, but her eyes, when they briefly turned to Louisa, revealed icy fury. "One final determination," the judge concluded. "Any attempt at intimidation or retaliation against the witnesses in this case will result in severe consequences. This includes unjustified dismissals or defamation. Is that clear?" Everyone nodded. When the hearing was adjourned, Louisa felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The first step had been taken, but the road ahead would be arduous. In the corridor, while waiting for the elevator, Felicity whispered, "You were excellent." The judge clearly understood the gravity of the situation. Beatrice didn't expect us to have so much concrete evidence. "What happens now?" Louisa asked. "The independent evaluations will begin this week. Sophia will be taken to a neutral office, where she can be properly examined. The results will likely determine the next major step, whether she will remain in the residence or be temporarily placed in another environment. And what about me? Should I return to the mansion tomorrow as if nothing happened?" Felicity considered the question. "Ideally, yes. Your presence there is still important for Sophia. But be prepared. The atmosphere will be hostile. Beatrice won't make things easy. I'm aware of that. I just hope Sophia doesn't suffer repercussions because of me. The visits from social services will help prevent direct retaliation. Moreover, Richard seemed genuinely shaken by the revelations. He may become more present and vigilant now." As they left the courthouse late in the afternoon, Louisa saw Beatrice and Richard leaving in opposite directions, he to one car, she to another. The physical separation seemed to symbolize something larger disintegrating between them. The next morning, upon arriving at the mansion, Louisa was met by a chilling atmosphere. The staff avoided her, looking at her with a mixture of fear and silent admiration. Mrs. Eleanor was the only one to briefly approach her in the kitchen. "The mistress is furious," the housekeeper whispered. "She spent the entire night on the phone. The master didn't come home, and Sophia, she's in her room. Stepmother said she's indisposed to go to school. But she seems fine, physically at least. I think the presence of social services is inhibiting the worst. Louisa nodded, grateful for the information. When she finally reached the library, she found an envelope on her desk. Inside, a formal letter stating that her services were being re-evaluated due to performance issues, and that a final decision would be made in 2 weeks. It was a veiled threat, exactly the type of retaliation the judge had warned against. Louisa photographed the letter immediately and sent it to Felicity, along with a message explaining the context. The lawyer's response was quick, documented. We will continue. Monitoring. Stay strong, we are making progress. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. Louisa saw neither Sophia nor Richard, only Beatrice occasionally passing through the corridor, completely ignoring her presence. Late in the afternoon, as she was about to leave, she heard hurried footsteps approaching the library. It was Mrs. Eleanor with an alarmed expression. Miss Louisa, I just saw something concerning. 2 men were at Sophia's school today, trying to intimidate Marcia, the teacher. They said she should reconsider her testimony if she wanted to keep her career. A friend of mine works cleaning the school and just warned me. Did they identify themselves? Not explicitly, but they mentioned representing important interests and made it clear they knew everything about her, where she lives, her schedule, even where her son studies. Louisa felt a chill. I will inform the lawyer immediately. This is witness intimidation, a serious crime. As she typed an urgent message to Felicity reporting the incident, Louisa realized that the case was escalating rapidly. What began as a worried observation had turned into an increasingly dangerous confrontation, and she was at the center of it. The days following the first hearing were characterized by palpable tension in the Madison mansion. Louisa continued her work in the library, maintaining a discreet profile while documenting every relevant interaction. Richard, who used to be absent, now spent more time at home, observing the family dynamics with newly awakened eyes. Beatrice, in turn, maintained a facade of normalcy, although her barely disguised hostility towards Louisa was evident. When they crossed paths in the corridors, her gaze communicated silent threats. Sophia remained largely isolated, although the regular and unannounced visits from social services seemed to have prompted some superficial improvements in her treatment. On Wednesday, a week after the hearing, Louisa received a message from Felicity. Reports completed. Significant results. Follow-up hearing scheduled for Friday, 10 a.m. While organizing a bookshelf of rare books that afternoon, Louisa heard raised voices coming from Richard's office. Discreetly approaching the slightly ajar door, she could distinguish the argument between husband and wife. How could you hide this from me? Richard's voice sounded incredulous and furious. £300,000 in specialized treatments Sophia never received. You're exaggerating, Beatrice replied, alternating between defensive and conciliatory. Those funds were invested in her future. The private schools, the tutors who, according to Mrs. Eleanor, never showed up. Schools she barely attends. I'm looking at the statements now, Beatrice. Payments for spas, jewelers, your aesthetic clinic, all justified as educational and medical expenses for Sophia. Richard, you're being unfair. I take care of this house, this family. Family? His voice rose. You turned my daughter into a prisoner. The preliminary psychological report arrived today. Do you know what it says? That Sophia shows signs of trauma, chronic anxiety, fear of abandonment. She drew our family, Beatrice. You are depicted as a monster with claws. There was a tense silence broken by Beatrice's now calculatingly cold voice. Are you going to believe the scribbles of a confused child and the delusions of that envious librarian? I am protecting Sophia from negative influences, giving structure to a girl who lost her mother and has an absent father. If anyone failed here, Richard, it was you. The argument continued, but Louisa moved away, not wanting to be discovered. The psychological report had arrived and apparently confirmed her observations. More importantly, Richard finally seemed to be seeing reality. The next day, surprising news shook the mansion. Philip Morris, a respected investigative journalist from the Watcher portal, had published an extensive report on the case without mentioning names as it involved a minor, but with enough details to make the situation identifiable to those who knew the family. The article, titled Invisible Abuse, When Status Protects Abusers, detailed how children from wealthy families could suffer hidden ill treatment under the guise of privilege and rigorous education. The text cited anonymous sources from the judicial system and public documents from the case, revealing the pattern of isolation, emotional neglect, and misappropriation of funds. The reaction was immediate. The mansion's phone did not stop ringing. Influential friends, clients of the law firm, acquaintances from London's high society, everyone wanted to know what was happening. Richard locked himself in his office, refusing to answer calls. Beatrice, on the other hand, gave interviews to blogs and websites sympathetic to her version, presenting herself as a victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by an obsessive employee. "It's revolting how a woman dedicated to her family can be persecuted in this way," she declared to the Successful Women portal between carefully rehearsed tears. "All because I tried to set boundaries for a librarian who developed an unhealthy attachment to my stepdaughter." In parallel with this media battle, another front opened. Anonymous blogs began to publish supposed revelations about Louisa's past, insinuating non-existent psychiatric problems and even a false history of similar accusations in previous jobs. When Louisa saw her name being defamed online, she immediately contacted Felicity, who was already monitoring the situation. "It's exactly what we expected," the lawyer explained. "Beatrice is using her contacts to create a smokescreen. We've already taken steps to hold accountable any outlets that publish defamation without verification." Meanwhile, the journalist Philip Morris has been in touch. He's interested in speaking with you. Is it safe? Philip is known for his integrity. He already has access to the public documents of the case and is doing serious, not sensationalist work. We spoke with the judge, who authorizes your participation as long as no details that could directly identify Sophia are revealed. The meeting with Philip took place in a discreet cafe in the Soho neighborhood. The journalist, a man in his 40s with an attentive expression and a notepad always at hand, listened carefully as Louisa recounted her experience. "What most intrigues me about this case," he commented after listening for almost an hour, "is how abuse in high-income families follows specific patterns. It's rarely physical, it's psychological, it's financial, it's strategic isolation, it's the manipulation of public image." "Exactly," Louisa agreed. "The violence hides behind justifications of special discipline, differentiated education, personalized treatments. No one questions it because everything seems so legitimate." "And what about the father? Do you believe he really didn't know?" Louisa considered the question carefully. "I believe he chose not to see. It's different. Richard emotionally withdrew after losing his wife. He delegated not just tasks, but the responsibility to observe, to be present. He allowed Beatrice to build a parallel world where he only saw what she wanted to show." The interview resulted in a second, even more impactful report, focusing on the psychological and social mechanisms that allow abuse to thrive in privileged environments. The article generated such an impact that the Bar Council and Child Protection Associations publicly spoke out, calling for special attention to similar cases that might be going unnoticed. On the eve of the second hearing, while public opinion was divided between Beatrice's supporters and advocates for protective intervention, a new element emerged, and it was decisive. Thomas Fletcher, head of security at the Madison Mansion, contacted Felicity with crucial information. The residence's camera system had captured a disturbing incident 3 nights prior. With a judicial authorization issued emergently, and Richard's consent, who, shaken by recent revelations, was cooperating with the investigation. The recordings were accessed. The video, dated 3:27 a.m., showed Beatrice entering Sophia's room, abruptly waking the girl, and performing an action that shocked even the most experienced professionals. She tore, page by page, a children's book Sophia was trying to protect, while gesturing aggressively and saying something that, although without audio, clearly terrified the child. Louisa immediately recognized the book. It was a copy of stories that had belonged to Sophia's mother, one of the few physical memories the girl had of Clarissa. When the video was presented at the second hearing on Friday morning, the effect was devastating. Beatrice's mask completely fell. Her lawyer tried to argue that the video had no audio and could be misinterpreted. but the violent body language and the deliberate destruction of a cherished object belonging to the child spoke for themselves. Judge Cecilia Albright watched the recording with a grave expression before turning to the reports. Presented by Dr. Paul Reynolds and Dr. Marina Grant, the psychological report indicates significant trauma, Dr. Reynolds explained. Sophia exhibits hypervigilance, separation anxiety, and specific fears associated with the substitute maternal figure. In doll therapy sessions, she repeatedly enacts scenes of humiliation and isolation. Her emotional development is being severely compromised. Dr. Grant supplemented with her medical observations. The child is underweight for her age, shows signs of chronic stress such as nails bitten to the cuticle, hair loss and sleep disturbances, all consistent with neglect and ongoing psychological abuse. Richard, who had been watching everything with a devastated expression, stood up at a certain point. "Your Honor, I would like to make a statement." With the judge's permission, he continued, "I failed my daughter. I believed I was providing the best for her by focusing on building financial security, while neglecting the most important thing, her emotional well-being and her safety within our own home. I did not perceive it, or did not want to perceive, the signs of abuse. I am deeply regretful and willing to do whatever is necessary to repair the damage." Beatrice, who until then had maintained studied composure, erupted in indignation. "This is a farce. Everyone is conspiring against me. Richard, are you going to believe these strangers instead of your own wife?" The judge banged her gavel, demanding order. After a tense moment, she delivered her decision. "Based on the evidence presented, the professional reports, and the evident risk to the minor's physical and psychological integrity, I order Sophia Madison's immediate removal from the family residence. The child will be provisionally placed in a specialized foster home, where she will receive the necessary support as the case proceeds." Beatrice stood up abruptly, but the judge continued unperturbed. "Additionally, I prohibit any contact between Mrs. Beatrice Hamilton Madison and the minor until further notice. As for Mr. Richard Madison, he may conduct supervised visits 3 times a week, conditioned on regular psychological follow-up reports." The judge adjusted her glasses before proceeding with the most serious part. "The case files will be forwarded to the public prosecutor's office for investigation of the crimes of ill treatment, provided for in Article 136 of the Penal Code, and embezzlement, as per Article 168 of the same code. The financial investigation detected the diversion of approximately £1.2 million from the fund designated for the minor." Beatrice turned to her lawyer, whispering furiously, but the judge had not yet finished. "Finally, I determine that all professionals involved in the case receive protective measures against possible retaliation, including Ms. Louisa Anderson, teacher Marcia Olson, Mrs. Eleanor, and journalist Philip Morris. Any attempt at intimidation or defamation will result in immediate legal consequences." When the hearing was adjourned, Louisa felt an enormous weight lifted from her shoulders. Sophia would finally be protected, at least for now. In the corridor, while social services escorts were already preparing to pick up the girl from the mansion, Richard approached Louisa. "Miss Anderson, Louisa, He seemed to struggle with words. "How did I not notice? How did I let this happen right under my nose?" "You saw what you were prepared to see," Louisa replied softly. "Now you have the chance to do differently." I want to regain my daughter's trust, be the father she deserves. I just don't know how. By being present, not just physically but emotionally. Sophia needs to know she can count on you unconditionally." Richard nodded, his eyes welling up. "Thank you for doing what I should have done, for protecting my daughter." That afternoon, as Sophia was taken to the specialized foster home, a serene place on the outskirts of London, with a multidisciplinary team and a welcoming structure, Louisa cleared her desk in the mansion's library. She had been officially dismissed, as expected, but with substantial severance pay determined by the judge to prevent financial retaliation. As she walked out through the imposing gates for the last time, Louisa looked back. The mansion had never seemed so cold and empty, despite all its opulence. In her car, Felicity was waiting. "How are you feeling?" the lawyer asked. "Relieved for Sophia, worried about what's next." Louisa placed the box with her belongings in the back seat. I hope she'll be okay in this new place. Rainbow House is one of the best foster care centers in the county, specialized in cases like hers, with a team prepared for complex traumas. Felicity smiled gently. And I have some news. The judge authorized you to visit Sophia if you wish. She specifically asked for you. Louisa felt her eyes fill with tears. Of course I wish to. I promised her I wouldn't abandon her. As they left the upscale neighborhood heading downtown, Felicity commented, "You know, this case could set an important precedent. We've already received contacts from 3 other professionals, a music teacher, a driver and a private nurse, reporting similar situations in affluent families. People who witnessed abuse but feared not being believed because of the abuser's status. Is Philip's report opening doors? More than that, it's opening eyes. Abuse in elite families is often more subtle, more sophisticated, more easily disguised as privileges. What you did, Louisa, was show that no matter how much wealth or influence someone has, no one is above the law when it comes to protecting a child." As the car moved through London's chaotic traffic, Louisa reflected on the entire journey, from the first unsettling observations to the decisive action that changed Sophia's destiny. The path had been difficult, risky, often lonely. But remembering the girl's face, her silent resilience, she knew that every step had been worth it. At Rainbow House, at that exact moment, Sophia was receiving her new room, simple but cozy, with colorful walls and a low bookshelf filled with carefully selected children's books. For the first time in a long time, the girl didn't need to ask permission to touch objects, didn't need to fear repercussions for simply being a child. The team of psychologists gently explained where she was and why. They said her father would visit her soon, and that a special friend, the library aunt, was also allowed to see her. Sophia didn't smile openly. Traumas take time to heal, but a small glimmer of hope appeared in her eyes, like a timid flame that finally had oxygen to grow. That night, as Sophia was escorted to her first play therapy session, news of the case reached national proportions. The video of the aggression, with Sophia's face protected by blurs, was shown on news channels. Experts debated how to identify psychological abuse in different social contexts. Child protection associations received an unprecedented flow of similar complaints. At the Watcher newspaper headquarters, Philip Morris received a call from his editor. His series of reports had been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize for Journalism. "You humanized an issue that many prefer to ignore," the editor said. "You showed that there is civic courage in protecting the most vulnerable, even against the most powerful." In Mrs. Eleanor's small apartment, the housekeeper who had risked her livelihood to defend Sophia received a job offer from another family, not as rich as the Madisons, but with values more aligned with hers. The new employer had been impressed by her integrity in testifying in the case. At the Montessori school, teacher Marcia organized training for the entire staff on identifying signs of abuse and neglect, especially in contexts where appearances are carefully maintained. And at Louisa's house, a librarian who had transformed her attention to detail and love of books into tools of justice, the phone rang. It was Felicity. "You can visit Sophia tomorrow at 10 a.m. She's eager to see you." Rainbow House occupied a renovated old country house in the Surrey region, about 40 minutes from London. Surrounded by trees and with a well-maintained garden, the institution was nothing like the cold stereotype of children's shelters. Louisa parked her car at the entrance and was greeted by Carmen Stewart, the facility's coordinator. "Sophia is waiting for you in the library," Carmen informed her with a gentle smile. Since she knew you were coming, she spent most of her time there. Louisa followed the coordinator down a corridor decorated with framed children's drawings until they reached a cozy room with low shelves full of colorful books, beanbags scattered on the floor, and a large window that illuminated the environment with natural light. Sophia was sitting on a blue beanbag, flipping through a book. When she looked up and saw Louisa, her expression transformed, not into an open smile. It was still too early for that, but into something equally valuable, a look of secure recognition, of trust. "Aunt Lou!" she exclaimed, standing up. "Hello, Sophia." Louisa approached, crouching down to the girl's height. "How are you?" Sophia briefly looked at Carmen, as if seeking permission or confirmation before replying, "I'm good. There are lots of books here, and no one shouts at me." The simplicity of the phrase deeply affected Louisa. For Sophia, the absence of hostility was already a huge step forward. "I brought something for you," Louisa said, pulling a package from her bag. "Remember that book you told me was damaged? I found another copy exactly the same." Sophia's eyes widened as she unwrapped the present, a new edition of the same storybook Beatrice had destroyed, the one that had belonged to her mother. "It's just like Mommy," she murmured, caressing the cover. "I thought we could read it together if you'd like." Sophia nodded, settling back onto the beanbag and gesturing to the space beside her for Louisa. For the next hour they read the stories, with Louisa making different voices for each character, eliciting, for the first time since they met, small, genuine smiles from the girl. At the end of the visit, when Carmen discreetly indicated that time was running out, Sophia held Louisa's hand tightly. "Will you come back?" "Whenever they allow me," Louisa promised. "And know that many people are working to ensure you are well, safe, and happy." "My father is coming to see me tomorrow," Sophia commented, with an expression difficult to decipher. "Dr. Anna will be there too." Dr. Anna was the Rainbow House psychologist, responsible for accompanying Richard's supervised visits. Louisa nodded, maintaining a neutral tone. "That's good. It's important for you two to talk. Do you think he likes me?" The question came loaded with insecurity, revealing one of the deepest wounds left by the neglect. "Sophia, I am absolutely sure your father loves you very much. Sometimes adults make mistakes even when they want to do right. The important thing is that now he is trying to do things differently." The girl considered the answer, hugging the book to her chest. "Handlu, it's good here, but it's not forever, right? Where will I live next?" The question was too complex for a simple answer. "That will still be decided with great care, always thinking about what's best for you. But don't worry about that now, okay? You are safe here, and that's what matters at the moment." Leaving Rainbow House, Louisa found Felicity waiting in the parking lot as they had arranged. "How is she?" the lawyer asked. "Better than I expected. More relaxed. She still has many unresolved issues, especially about her father, but she seems to be receiving adequate support." Felicity nodded, satisfied. "The preliminary reports are positive. The team notes significant improvement in sleep and eating patterns. She hasn't verbalized much about her stepmother yet, but in doll therapy sessions, the figure representing Beatrice always ends up isolated or grounded." "And what about the case? Any news?" "Several, actually. We'll talk on the way." As they drove back to London, Felicity updated Louisa on the case's developments. The public prosecutor's office had formalized charges against Beatrice for ill treatment and embezzlement. A full audit of Sophia's financial fund revealed even larger diversions than initially identified. Almost £2 million had been transferred to the stepmother's personal accounts in the last 2 years. Richard was listed as a witness, not a defendant, as he is cooperating fully, Felicity explained. He hired an independent team to restore Sophia's fund, not only returning the diverted amount, but tripling it as compensation. He also established a management board with judicial oversight to ensure no one else can manipulate these resources. And how is he coping with all this? From what I hear, he has drastically reduced his workload at the office, delegated several cases to partners, and is in intensive therapy. He seems genuinely determined to rebuild his relationship with Sophia, though he understands it will take time. And Beatrice? She filed for divorce 3 days after the second hearing. She still maintains the narrative of a conspiracy against her, but she accepted an agreement that includes a non-molestation order concerning Sophia. She's likely trying to mitigate the criminal consequences. Louisa absorbed the information in silence, thinking about all the ramifications that a single act of courage could generate. The decision to document what she witnessed, to seek professional help, to confront a system that often favors the powerful, all of this had created waves of change that went far beyond Sophia. "There's something else," Felicity continued, interrupting her thoughts. "I've received invitations from 3 child protection associations to present the case, anonymized, of course, as a study for professionals working with children. They want to create better protocols for identifying abuse in contexts of privilege." "That's an excellent idea," Louisa agreed. "The more people who know how to recognize the signs—" "Exactly. And speaking of which, I received a proposal that might interest you. Felicity showed an email on her phone. The British Library Association is organizing a workshop on the role of library professionals in child protection. They want you to be the keynote speaker. Louisa read the invitation, surprised. Me? But I'm not a child protection specialist. You did something many specialists cannot. You observed carefully, documented methodically, and acted with determination. Do you have any idea how many children in similar situations are ignored because no one notices the patterns or has the courage to report them? The idea of transforming her experience into useful knowledge for other professionals made Louisa reflect on a new purpose. Since leaving the Madison mansion, she had been considering her next professional steps. Several affluent families had contacted her, interested in her library services, but she wondered if she couldn't contribute more significantly. "I'll consider the invitation," she finally replied, "if my experience can help other children." In the following weeks, the lives of everyone involved in the case continued to transform. Rainbow House reported consistent progress in Sophia's development. She had returned to school, a different institution, recommended by the multidisciplinary team, was gaining weight, sleeping better, and gradually regaining the confidence to express her emotions. Richard's visits, initially tense and formal, became more natural. Under psychological guidance, he learned to truly listen to his daughter, to be present not only physically but emotionally. He brought books for them to read together, genuinely interested himself in her school activities, and respected her pace of reconnection. Louisa continued to visit Sophia regularly, becoming a constant and reliable presence in her life. After one of these visits, she was approached by Carmen with an unexpected question. "Have you considered becoming a foster carer for Sophia?" "Tati foster carer," Louisa repeated, surprised. "It's an intermediate modality between institutional care and adoption. The child lives with a family or individual registered and evaluated by the judiciary, who offers temporary care until the family situation is resolved." I never considered that," Louisa admitted. "Do you think it would be a possibility?" "Sophia clearly has a strong bond with you," Carmen replied, "and you've demonstrated consistent commitment to her well-being. It would be a process, of course. Evaluations, registration, preparation. But if you're interested, I can put you in touch with the judiciary's technical team." The idea stayed with Louisa in the days that followed. Would her modest apartment have space for a child? Would her routine accommodate the responsibilities? More importantly, would it be best for Sophia? These questions accompanied her as she reorganized her professional life. She decided to accept the invitation for the Library Association workshop and, during preparation, transformed her experience into a technical article on documentation and observation as tools for protection. The text caught the attention of academia, and she was soon invited to teach classes in a specialization course in social librarianship. On a Friday afternoon, about 3 months after Sophia's placement began, Louisa was summoned to a meeting at the Family Court of Justice. Richard would also be present, as would the technical team from Rainbow House and representatives from social services. Judge Cecilia Albright conducted the meeting with the same attentive seriousness she had demonstrated throughout the process. "We are here to discuss the next steps in Sophia Madison's case. The multidisciplinary team's reports indicate significant progress, but also point to the need for a transition to a more familiar environment, preserving the advances already achieved." Richard, who in recent weeks had demonstrated a genuine commitment to his personal recovery and to reconnecting with his daughter, was the first to speak. "Your Honor, my absolute priority is Sophia's well-being. I recognize that I failed gravely as a father, and I am committed to rebuilding our relationship. However, I understand that an immediate reintegration may not be the most appropriate at this time." The judge nodded, appreciating the self-awareness he demonstrated. "Indeed, Mr. Madison, the technical team recommends a gradual transition, starting with a shared custody model between you and a foster family. The question now is, who could assume this role?" It was then that Carmen presented the suggestion she had made to Louisa weeks earlier. "Sophia has established a particularly strong bond with Ms. Anderson. She represents security and trust for the girl, and was the first adult to effectively protect her. We believe she would be an ideal candidate for a foster carer. if she is willing. All eyes turned to Louisa, who felt the weight of the responsibility such a decision would entail. "Ms. Anderson," the judge inquired, "is this a possibility you would consider?" Louisa took a deep breath before answering. "Your Honor, from the moment I realized what was happening to Sophia, my only goal was to protect her. If the technical team believes I can contribute to her recovery in this new role, I am willing to do whatever is necessary." The judge consulted the reports in front of her. "You have already undergone preliminary evaluations that indicate suitability for the role. However, I must clarify that it would be a significant commitment involving adaptations in your personal and professional life." "I fully understand, Your Honor." "And what about you, Mr. Madison? How do you feel about this possibility?" Richard looked at Louisa with a mixture of gratitude and respect. "Sophia trusts Ms. Anderson in a way that she doesn't trust me anymore for now. If this arrangement allows my daughter to feel safe while we rebuild our relationship, I couldn't support it." "Versa." After almost 2 hours of technical discussions, the judge announced her decision. Sophia would be gradually transferred to shared custody between Louisa and Richard. The girl would primarily reside with Louisa, while maintaining regular meetings with her father, initially supervised, then progressively more independent. "It is essential that everyone understands," emphasized Judge Cecilia, "that the ultimate goal is what is best for Sophia, whether it is full reintegration into paternal custody, the maintenance of this shared model, or any other arrangement that proves suitable for her healthy development. The most important thing is that Sophia's needs are heard and respected." A week later, it was time to communicate the decision to Sophia herself. In a cozy room at Rainbow House with her psychologist present, the girl listened attentively to the explanations. "Does that mean I'm going to live with Aunt Lou?" she asked, seeking confirmation. "Yes, if you want," the psychologist replied, "and you'll also see your father regularly. You'll build a new routine little by little." Sophia considered the information for a few moments before asking, "And stepmother Beatrice? Will she be there?" "No, Sophia. Beatrice will not be able to approach you." An almost imperceptible sigh of relief escaped the girl. "Can I bring my books?" "All of them," Louisa assured, watching the conversation with a racing heart. "And we'll buy more if you want." "Is your house big?" The question was so practical, so childlike in its simplicity, that it drew gentle smiles from the adults. "It's not as big as the mansion," Louisa explained honestly. "It's an average apartment with 2 bedrooms. One will be all yours for us to decorate together." Sophia seemed satisfied with the answer. After a few more practical questions, about school, about her father, about the possibility of having a pet, the girl surprised everyone with a simple but profound declaration. "I want to go. With Aunt Lou, I'm not scared." The transition happened gradually, as recommended by the technical team. First, Sophia's visits to Louisa's apartment to get to know the space, then an overnight stay on the weekend, until finally on a sunny Sunday morning, the transfer was completed. The room Louisa had prepared for Sophia was simple but cozy, walls in a soft shade of green, a bed with a colorful quilt, a bookshelf already partially filled with books, and a desk for studies and drawings. Together, in the following weeks, they personalized the space with Sophia's own drawings, small decorative objects chosen by her, and photographs, including one of her mother, Clarissa, that Richard had provided. The new routine settled in naturally. Sophia returned to regularly attending school, now a smaller institution, with a more personalized approach. Louisa reorganized her work hours, dividing her time between library consulting and the classes she had begun teaching in the specialization course. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Sophia spent the afternoon with her father, who had rented a nearby apartment and drastically reduced his professional commitments. It was not a process without challenges. Sophia still had occasional nightmares, moments of insecurity, and difficulties expressing certain emotions. She continued weekly therapy, and the multidisciplinary team maintained regular follow-up. But progress was evident and consistent. 6 months after the move, during a reassessment hearing, Judge Cecilia heard the updated reports with evident satisfaction. Sophia shows significant emotional development, the psychologist reported. The bond with her guardian, Ms. Anderson, is secure and positive, providing the necessary foundation of trust for her to process her traumas. The relationship with her father is gradually rebuilding, with authentic engagement from both parties. And what about academic performance? The judge questioned. Impressive recovery. Sophia always had exceptional potential, which was being stifled by the toxic environment. Now, with adequate support, she is flourishing academically. At the end of the hearing, the judge confirmed the continuation of the current arrangement, with minor adjustments to gradually increase the time Sophia spent with Richard, as the girl's comfort allowed. Any contact or attempt at approach by Mrs. Beatrice Hamilton Madison, Judge Cecilia asked before concluding. None, Your Honor, Felicity replied, who continued to follow the case. She left the country after the divorce settlement. As far as we know, she is in Europe, maintaining distance as judicially determined. Sophia's case inspired changes that transcended her individual situation. Philip Morris, the journalist who covered the story, received the Pulitzer Prize for his series of reports on child abuse in privileged contexts. His work motivated a special task force in the public prosecutor's office to investigate similar cases. The British Library Association, in partnership with the Federal Council of Psychology, developed a protocol for identifying signs of abuse and neglect specifically for professionals working in high-end residences, private librarians, tutors, housekeepers, and other staff often overlooked as potential protectors. Louisa transformed her experience into material for a university course on librarianship and social responsibility, teaching future professionals to recognize their potential role in protecting vulnerable children. Richard, after intensive therapeutic work, found a new balance between his career and his role as a father. He permanently reduced his workload, delegated responsibilities, and reorganized his priorities. In his therapist's words, he had rediscovered his capacity to be present. And Sophia, in her new modest and affectionate home with Louisa, she gradually rediscovered the joy of being a child. Her laughter, once rarely heard, became part of daily life. She developed new interests. Reading remained her favorite. But now she also enjoyed drawing, playing keyboard, and taking care of Flora, the kitten Louisa had adopted for her. On a quiet winter evening, almost a year after the entire journey began, Sophia and Louisa sat on the small apartment balcony, watching the city lights while sipping hot chocolate. Aunt Lou, Sophia called, using the affectionate nickname she had created. Do you think one day I'll forget all the bad things that happened? Louisa carefully considered the question before answering. I don't think we completely forget difficult things, Sophia, but I believe they can transform within us. Experiences that hurt us can make us stronger, more understanding of others' pain. Sophia nodded thoughtfully, blowing on the surface of her chocolate. Like you saw I was sad and did something. Exactly. We can all choose to look carefully, notice when something isn't right, and have the courage to act. The girl was silent for a moment, watching the stars begin to appear in the night sky. When I grow up, she finally declared, I want to help other children who are sad like I was. Louisa felt her eyes well up, touched by the depth and generosity of that resilient soul of just 8 years old. You will, Sophia. I'm sure you will. That night, as she helped Sophia get ready for bed, Louisa reflected on the extraordinary power of small actions. An attentive gaze, a documented observation, a decision not to remain silent, seemingly simple gestures that together had completely altered the course of a life. On Sophia's bedroom shelf, among children's books and stuffed animals, there was a small framed plaque with words Louisa had carefully chosen. It was a quote that summarized everything they had learned together. Protecting a child does not require extraordinary powers. It requires watchful eyes, an open heart, and the courage to do what is right, even when it seems difficult. Sophia fell asleep serenely, holding the storybook that had once belonged to her mother, not the original destroyed, but the new copy Louisa had given her, now as precious as the first. In her most recent drawing, hanging on the bedroom wall, there were 3 figures holding hands, her in the center, her father on one side, and Louisa on the other. Above, a blue sky full of free birds. The transformation would continue, day after day, page after page of a new story being written with care, respect, and love, the true antidotes to the abuse that once tried to extinguish her light. End of story. Dear listeners, We hope Sophia and Luisa's story has deeply touched your hearts. To continue this journey of narratives that make us reflect on the courage needed to protect the most vulnerable, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking the button on the left. If this story awakens something in you, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give this video a special like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of life, human bonds, and the strength that exists in small acts of courage. Share your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel following Sophia's journey? Have you witnessed situations where someone had the courage to make a difference in a child's life? Your experiences and reflections are valuable to our community. Until the next story, always remember that true transformation begins with a simple, attentive glance.